much I love Harmony.
Yeah.
I used to stalk her in the airports going to events. And there's that girl that I really like a lot. Maybe I'll get to meet her someday. And now we actually talk to each other in the airports on our way to events. So we sit together, yeah. And we like try to hold each other's seats. So my name is Alece. Nauck-Heisey, I like that. That rings to that. I went to such a small high school.
That thing distracted me. I'm like,
oh yeah, I get it totally. But I went to such a small high school. Like I graduated with 62 people, and so the principal like had plenty of time to get to know us. And I'm praying on the day that I graduate that he says my name correctly as I walk across the stage, because it was always Alece. Nauck. Alece Nauck. I mean, it's not that hard when you know how to say it, but if y'all want to call me Alece, that's our little, bonding thing. So I'm excited to be here with y'all and share on a topic that has become very near and dear to me. Some of you have already heard me speak on this topic at different events before, but it's one of those that I feel like it's hard for me to have a conversation without talking about belief. Because I've been on both sides of not having it for a long time and then seeing what happens when you do have it. And I really believe that for most people on our team, the thing that we're running short on the most is that the belief that the best that this company has to offer really is available for me. Like for you to fill that in for you. It's easy to see MVPs, oh yeah, the best is for them. But to say it's the best is available for me is a really challenging thing to say. I love hearing Harmony and others say, Laura, my goal when I got into Arbonne was to earn $1,000 or $3,000. My goal was to earn my $29 back. I was like, I would be so lucky if I could just make my $29 back. And then maybe cover the cost of my first kit, because back then it was $100, for your products. And I was like, if that'll happen, I will be so happy. But I will tell you, it was a bigger vision that brought me into Arbonne. It wasn't a small vision at all. The Arbonne consultant who did that very first presentation I went to, she was telling me stories of Deanna Osborne replacing her medical salary and her husband's medical salary all in 2 years. And I didn't know what physicians made, but I knew it was a lot. So I was like, a lot plus a lot is a whole lot. And I think I know what I do with a whole lot of money. And my vision wasn't the same as some of those stories I heard at that presentation, but the vision that was cast to me was so big that it tempted me to believe. It offered me hope that just maybe this could be something for me. In my most honest moments, it was please let me pay back my $29. But she cast a vision for me of what was possible, and then that was nurtured over time. And so I love talking about belief because it's something that I think a lot of us end up struggling with, even at the MVP level. You can still have days where like, oh, I have my team say, I don't even know where my next business builder is going to come from. I'm like, I don't know where my next business builder is going to come from. I have a list of people that I'm talking to. I know who I want on my team, but we don't know where that next one's going to come from. We just have to keep doing the do and keep planting seeds and nurturing those seeds, and when the harvest time comes, it'll come. So for you to hold that belief regardless of what things look like in your business is what I want y'all to really latch onto today. So I'm going to cover a couple key components that are really important about belief that I think we talk about all the time, but it's easy to gloss over it. And one of those is belief is a decision. For some of you, you may be like, yeah, of course, no brainer. This was news to me when I first heard it, and I was 2 years into my Arbonne business, and I was a struggling area manager. And the first time it hit me square between the eyes was at a training event out in Oklahoma. Our mentor, Cecilia Stoll, all of us linked back to her. She's the #1 income earner. She and then these other MVPs had a big event in Oklahoma, and I went, and I actually got 3 teammates to go with me. And I thought that was pretty impressive to get people to go to Oklahoma, because I didn't think there was really anything in Oklahoma. And so you convince other people to go to nothing, like, wow, I got some skills. So yeah, real good. not struggling anymore, and she's not by herself. She had 16 people, and she was in qualifications for region. And I thought, dang it. What happened in 3 months that she can go from struggling area to region qual? I'm getting a little ticked here, so I'm like, what? She found the secret. I am sitting next to her, and I'm going to find out what the secret is. And she did. And the secret was, before she didn't believe, and then she was on the phone with Cecilia telling her why Arbonne doesn't work. Isn't that ridiculous? Tell the #1 income earner why Arbonne doesn't work. She's like, I think it does. And so she was telling her why it doesn't work. And Cecilia said, well, it sounds like you just haven't decided to believe. And this woman was like, what? What do you mean decided? She said, yeah, it's a decision. You decide that it will work for you, and then you put action behind that decision. And this woman was like, are you serious? It's that simple? Like, I just wake up in the morning and I decide to believe? And she's like, yes. She's like, okay. So she woke up that next morning and she decided to believe, and she acted on that belief, and 3 months later she's in qual for region. And I thought, that heifer. I grew up in the South, and that's what you call it when a woman you're trying to mix with. Instead of calling her a cow, you call her a heifer. That heifer went and got busy and made a decision, and I could have done the same thing, and I didn't. If it is that simple, then game on. I am coming after you. And I thought, I will not let her be able to let that be her reality and not also be true for me too. So I decided that it would work for me, and I decided that I wouldn't give more energy to fear and discouragement and complaining and blame shifting, and I was going to put my energy towards fun and belief and gratitude. And you guys, what starts to happen when you do that, amazing things. There's a picture that I have of me at that Oklahoma event. So there's me, my 3 teammates. 2 of them are still with me. And then, of course, Cecilia in the middle. So this is what it looks like when you don't believe yet. Pretty crazy. And then the next picture is a picture of what it looks like when you do believe. And you're sitting in your brand new Mercedes that you just picked up. Like, I haven't owned this for more than an hour at the time of this photo. I'm like, oh, that's a beautiful field. So I pull over, and my husband's behind me, because he had to drive me there to take me. He's like, why is she pulling over? I'm like, that field is pretty. We're getting a picture right now. This is my Mercedes moment. And so that's what it looks like when you start to show up with belief. But if you notice the photo previous, there were 3 people with me. There were people willing to trust me and believe me if I just started showing up. And that's something that I had to do. So belief is a decision. And sometimes we need the hard truth right in front of us to put a fire in our britches, like that heifer did for me. And it got me moving. It got me, it shook the unbelief out of me. I thought belief was something that grew and aged with time, like wine and cheese. And the longer you let it marinate, the better it is. That is not belief. Belief is you decide today and you act on it. And you don't wait for the belief fairy to sprinkle her magic dust on you, because she's right there with the tooth fairy. She's not coming. So I asked my daughter, I put my tooth under the pillow. Is she coming yet? Is she coming? Oh, I think I heard she's got an injured wing. Lie to my daughter. So belief is a decision you make and you act on it. Okay, number 2, belief has a sound. This is huge. I heard Cecilia talk about this all the time. I'm like, what does that mean? But I am not going to let her know that I don't know, so I'm not going to ask her. I'm like, what does belief has a sound? Okay, when you really get it in your bones that Arbonne can change a life, people hear that, right? Like, that is worth talking about. When you believe, and people can hear that passion and that conviction in your voice. And because you're offering hope, and hope is powerful. And when you speak with belief like that, people will follow you. They want what you have, because no one else is giving them hope of that level. So Miranda Burcham, she's a top income earner, and she's so motivating, inspiring, and she said at one of Cecilia's retreats not long ago, she said, are your words moving people? If your words don't move people, voice. And so when someone tells you, I'm not really into sales, one thing you might want to take a look at is, how did you sound? Did your words move people? Were they filled with passion and conviction? Now, there's some people who still don't get what we do, or they just want to give excuses, and so they'll say, I don't want to do it because I don't want to do sales, and you were as passionate as you could be. So don't always use that to beat yourself up. But it was a helpful thing for me when Cecilia said, we were on our way to nation, but I felt like we kind of plateaued at like 130,000, and I didn't know how to get past that. And Cecilia reminded me, she's like, Alece, talk with your team, and how are they talking about Arbonne? Because if they're just showing up for the job and not speaking with passion and conviction, then they're just really an employee punching the clock, and that moves no one. And I was like, you know what, she's right. I don't know that my whole team is speaking with passion and conviction and full-on belief. When you believe big, people hear it in your voice and they want what you have. I also heard Carlita Nelson talk about this one time, and she said, when you're talking about Arbonne, are you offering the true Arbonne story? Like what was offered to me about that medical doctor replacing her salary and her husband's salary in 2 years. That's the full Arbonne story. That's full-on belief. Are you offering that, or are you offering a watered-down version with your hang-ups, your fears, and your unbelief woven in? And I was struggling for 2 years as that area manager because that's what Arbonne sounded like when it came out of my mouth. It was not full-on belief. And so I think a lot of our teammates are putting in a lot of effort and doing the do, but without the passion and conviction, they're not going to bear the fruit. That harvest is not going to come in. And so you have to have that passion and conviction. Here's another thing, though, and this is like a truth bomb about belief, is belief isn't about trying harder, because we've created a circuitry in our brain that is our default drive, and traveling harder and faster in the same direction only gets you further away faster. It's not about trying harder. It's about changing our beliefs about ourselves, about who we know ourselves to be. And a friend of mine that I just met within the past year has been encouraging me in this idea of who we know ourselves to be. So I'm going to tell you a short little story. How many of you have heard of George Hincapie? Maybe a couple of you. Okay. How many of you heard of Lance Armstrong? Okay, like practically the whole thing. Okay, George Hincapie is the domestique of Lance Armstrong. And the domestique, and you can go to the next slide there, this is the rider who actually gets out in front and is the front lead for the team for most of the race, so that the star, Lance, can ride in his draft for most of the race, so that the Lance has the energy to push past and, cross the finish line and get all the glory. But it's the George who did all the really hard slaving away work. You have to be a really elite athlete to be the domestique. In fact, he's probably a better cyclist than Lance because of all he has to endure through the race. And even as formidable of an athlete as he was, he had a weak area, and that was climbing the mountains during the race on his bike. And so he wanted to up his game, and he worked with trainers, nutritionists, doctors to see if there was anything physically that they could do and tweak to help him climb mountains better on his bike, and nothing made much of a difference. And so this friend of mine, she's a consultant and a practitioner of applied psychology and high performance thinking, which just means she helps work with people on how the cognitive realm actually and literally affects performance. And one of her colleagues was in the same town as George, and she asked to work with him on his head game. She said, can I be your head coach? And he's like, sure, I actually hadn't hired anybody to do that yet, so sure. And so she asked him some questions for reflection to see if it would lead them to a revelation and a breakthrough and understanding for him. And he told her the negative thoughts that would start to enter his head as he would approach a mountain. And as he kept talking, he ended up confessing, I'm just not a climber. And she's like, well, when did you first believe that? Because physiologically, this isn't bearing out to be true. Physically, you are a climber. And so he started to tell her a story. When he was young, his family would go to Colorado for vacation, and they'd go cycling, and he would always get sick. Well, what he didn't know at the time was he just had altitude sickness and he needed to adjust to the elevation. But his dad said to him, George, you're just not a climber. And so his dad gave him a belief that he sanctioned and owned as a child, not even realizing it. And for the rest of his life, it affected his performance. And so when George engaged in reflection, he realized that he'd accepted that belief and that that belief had defined his performance. And when he understood where it came from, he was able to challenge it. He was able to challenge that belief that wasn't serving him well and set himself free from the limits of it. He instead started working on owning a liberating belief about himself regarding his ability to climb mountains. And he was able to perform at his level of potential and go after what could be rather than focus on what has been. And that no longer robbed him of his potential. So it shouldn't surprise you that he started breaking his own records after that, because he challenged that belief that he had about himself. And so that really speaks to the power of beliefs, both ones that serve us well and ones that aren't serving us well. You know, what have we sanctioned and owned that someone else either intentionally or unintentionally gave us, and we're letting that dictate our potential and our performance? There's a couple things that George's story speaks to us here in Armand for sure about is we don't often perform at the level of our potential, but at the level of our belief. If our belief is not focused on our truest true, meaning George's truest true was that he was more than capable of climbing a mountain, but he had this trigger of when he saw the mountain, all the negative stories came up in his head, and so his belief went down because of that triggered thing. We talk about, oh, this person has so much potential on my team, but they're not acting according to their potential. It's because they're acting according to their belief. Their belief isn't where it should be that they can do this. All too often we don't make decisions on what can be, but on what has been. The one limits, the other liberates. Start shifting your belief from what has been to what can be, so that you're no longer limited but can be liberated. If you follow your triggers, they will lead us to a belief that we have sanctioned about ourselves, of who we know ourselves to be, and it most likely isn't our truest truth. And then when we engage in that reflection, we can take our thoughts and beliefs captive long enough to evaluate what's serving us well and what isn't serving us well. Cecilia talks about this. You can go to the last photo. She says that putting on belief is something you have to decide to do every single day. You decide to put on belief every day. Talk about consistency. If you're not putting belief on every single day that this can work for you, then you're going to be struggling with what has been and the limiting beliefs rather than what can be and the liberating ones. And so Cecilia said, what you can't just put on belief though, there's something else we have to do, and we have to take off unbelief. She said it's like getting dressed for the day, putting clothes over your pajamas. And so right around this time, my daughter comes into me. She's like, Mama, I'm going to go bike riding. So this is the other elite bike rider that I know. And she's got her clothes on over her jammies. I'm like, did your father dress you? And she said, no, I chose this. I'm like, are you sure you want to do that? And she's like, yes, this is my favorite jammies. I want to wear these for my bike ride. And I'm thinking, I don't know about this. So she went out, and within 5 minutes, she was back in the room crying, taking everything off. I'm so hot. I can't go cycling with my jammies on. I'm like, well, we talked about this. And she was done. There was nothing I could do to encourage her otherwise. And what seemed to be harmless enough, wearing your jammies underneath your clothes to go do the fun thing you were meant to do, doesn't seem like it would be that big a deal, but you know what? It's a huge deal to leave your unbelief jammies on. You can put all the Arbonne glam and glitz on you as much as you want, but if you still have your unbelief jammies on, that's going with you everywhere you go. You got to take that unbelief off first to put on your Arbonne belief. So I just want to encourage y'all that so much can happen in a really short time. Like my talk right now, it's already over and I'm out of my minutes. But there are some incredible stories of people who were like 2,500, 3,000 in volume mid-month. How many of you could, like, you don't have to raise your hand, but how many of you could relate to that? I got about 2,500, 3,000 this month, mid-month. They went to a training just like this. And by the end of the month, they were in qualifications for regional vice president. Not just area, but regional vice president. I got 2 pages of them here, and I don't have time to say them all to you. So I'll send them to your uplines and you can read them. But you guys, powerful things happen when you choose to believe, and you gotta make the decision. It has to show up in how you sound with passion and conviction. And if there's any kind of belief that's not serving you well, you gotta take that off so that you can put on what you need to have on and keep on so that people can hear the hope that you have to offer them. So thank you so much for your time. I want you to go believe big and know that you could be a name on my 2-page, let's make it 3 or 4 pages, right? Of people who had 2,500 mid-month, went to a training and finished the month in qualifications for region. So love you all. Thank you so much.